my pleasure to interview Dr. Leon McGoogan as a part of the University of Nebraska College of Medicine Centennial History. Dr. McGoogan, you came on campus as a medical student. When was that?
I came on campus as a medical student in September of 1921. My first visit on the campus had been earlier in the spring when I attended the 1921 PreMed Day.
And what about your pre-medical education?
That was at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. I had 3 years down there, registered as for a Bachelor of Arts degree.
And when you came here, who was dean of the College of Medicine at that time?
Dr. Irving Cutter.
And how were the admissions handled? Were they by the dean or by others at that time?
They were handled primarily, I believe, by the dean.
He interviewed the candidates? Or?
He interviewed the candidates, that's right. You submitted your applications, as I recall, to the medical school attention of the dean.
So you started in the fall, and who were your instructors in the basic sciences at that time?
Well, I can't remember all of them because I wasn't smart enough, I guess you might say, to go and pull an old catalog out for 1921. But the main new member of the faculty was Dr. John Latta, who had come in as in the Department of Anatomy, Division of Embryology. It was his first year on campus, his first teaching position. So the class of 1925 and John Latta have a great many things in common. We were his first class. The other people that I can remember would be Dr. Harold Eggers, who taught pathology, bacteriology. Okay. Dr. Sergius Morglis, who taught biochemistry.
Had Dr. McIntyre come at that time?
No.
Okay.
Dr. McIntyre was not on the campus. I can't remember right now who the professors were in neurology and in histology. But the ones I do remember are Dr. Pointer in anatomy, Dr. Latta in embryology primarily. Okay. The prosectors in anatomy at that time were Dr. Herbert H. Davis and Dr. Grudinsky.
Okay. Pointer was here? Pointer was in gross anatomy.
Pointer was gross anatomy.
And the freshman year was primarily gross anatomy, embryology?
Yes, we had about, we had embryology for 8 or 12 weeks, as I recall, and I don't remember the exact time. And then the rest of the time was given over to, basically, to pathology, to anatomy. There were some 800 hours, as I recall, with lectures and dissection. There was a combination that you had one class assignment all morning, another class assignment all afternoon.
Was the size of your class in the 80s?
About 100.
Oh, it was 100?
Yes, about 100 freshmen. There was an attrition of about 20% in those days.
So first year, the second year, the 2 years of basic sciences.
Yeah.
Previous individual I've interviewed commented that in Dr. Eggers, you had to painted your cross sections or something, watercolored your cross sections for the histology and embryology. You remember that?
I don't remember that, whether we did that or not. It's possible.
They were commenting you had to be as much an anatomist as you had to be an artist. That's why I was asking.
That part I don't know, but we had to do a lot of drawing from microscopic sections for Dr. Latta.
2 years in your clinical years now. What were the buildings on campus at that time?
Well, when I finished my sophomore year, I transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, and I did not have my clinical years here. But the buildings that were on the campus was the North Building, the first unit of the hospital, and the South Building, and there was temporary building for the nurses at that time. Those were the main buildings.
The first Conkling Hall was not built at that
First Conkling Hall, as I recall, was not built at that time.
Okay. You then went to the University of Pennsylvania for your 2 clinical years.
That's right.
Then what did you do after that?
Well, I had a 2-year rotating internship at the University of Pennsylvania, and then I had a year in gynecology at the University of Pennsylvania. Then I had a year in obstetrics at the Royal Victoria Montreal Maternity in Montreal, and then a year in general surgery at the Philemon Truesdale Hospital in Fall River, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
By that time, I had been out of school 5 years and hadn't made much money yet.
But well trained.
The salary in those days was the first 2 years as an intern, I got boardroom and laundry. The third year, which would have been my year in residency in gynecology, I got boardroom and laundry and $50 a month, which was paid by the chairman of the department out of his own personal funds. And then I got $80 a month out of my service at Royal Victoria. And then in Fall River, Massachusetts, I got $250 a month and lived outside and paid all my own expenses.
So you were loaded.
Oh, absolutely. I was able to buy a new Ford, my first car.
What were they selling for at that time?
About $750 for a businessman's coupe.
When did you come back to Omaha and to the College of Medicine?
I came back in December of 1930 and interviewed Dr. Pointer at that time, and was appointed as a clinical assistant in obstetrics and gynecology, beginning service January 1st, 1931.
Why did you come to Omaha?
Oh, various reasons. First place, my family had Omaha connections, and I was born and reared in Lincoln. Many of my personal friends that I had known in college and in medicine were located here. I had an opportunity to become personal assistant to Dr. Charles Pollard, who was the chairman of the department, and I had an association with him on the private staff. The hay fever, which I suffered from, was only 6 weeks in duration in this area instead of Dallas, where I was offered a very excellent position, but that hay fever season was 6 months.
So when you came on the faculty here, who were your colleagues in the clinical departments?
In the clinical department, Dr. Pollard was chairman of the department. Dr. Willis Taylor Sr. was in the department. Dr. Charles Moon was in the department. Dr. Earl Sage was in the department.
What about the other departments? Now, Dr. Howard Hunt was here in radiology.
No, Dr. Hunt wasn't here yet. He came that year, as I recall,
Oh,
31.
I see.
He
I
wasn't
see.
here when I came on.
I see.
He came later. Dr. Byron B. Davis was in surgery. Keegan was in surgery, neurosurgery. In medicine, there was Willis Moody, Bliss, that I can remember.
Now, these are individuals who had part-time appointments here and also in private practice?
Oh, they were part-time appointments, but nobody got paid. That was all volunteer. There were no paid staff in the clinical departments in the medical school from the time that I got in 1931 until about after World War II. It was all volunteer. Now, in the preclinical years, yes, those people were paid. And there was one medical man who, by the name of Esley Kirk, who was an internist, who was responsible for the clinical clerk service in internal medicine, was a paid individual. He was the only one. The rest of us devoted our time and our energies to teaching.
If I may, what kind of clinical challenges did you see when you first came on the staff, or what kind of problems did you see clinically? In
obstetrics?
Yes.
Oh, we saw a clinical practice that is in many ways the same as it is today. We saw the same problems with placenta previous. We saw the same problems with premature separations of the placenta. We saw more and more severe toxemias. We didn't see as many illegitimate children, but we did a considerable number of delayed labors with forceps deliveries. Cesarean section rate was probably 2%, whereas today it's about 18%.
Now, the control of infectious diseases made a change in your practice, though, didn't it?
Oh yes. See, when we came on in 1931, we had nothing for infectious diseases except the ordinary sterilization of our instruments and wearing sterile gloves and gowns.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody got infected, we didn't have sulfanilamide. We didn't have any of the sulfa compounds.
Right.
Penicillin was somebody else's, not somebody else's dream, basically, because Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin and reported it about 1921 or 23, but nobody paid any attention to his work until about the time World War II came along.
That's right. And you've been involved now in a teaching role here since the very early 30s, then, haven't
Yes,
you?
I was a clinical assistant and then went up the line and finally became chairman of the department in 1952.
How long were you chairman of the department, from 1952?
Well, I was acting chairman of the department from 1951 till 52, chairman of the department from 52 to 56, and then was professorial rank thereafter, but without chairmanship until 60. And then I was acting chairman again from 60 to 61. And then I, by university regulations, resigned as a full professor and became a consultant to the department about 12 years ago, at the age of 70.
12 years ago at the age of 70. And you still teach.
I still teach. Let's put it this way, I still have classes.
Now, I understand from talking to the students you still teach, and very effectively, mind you, very effective. You've also been very involved in the campaigns for the improvement of our library, indeed the establishment of our National Library, also on the University of Nebraska Foundation. You've been very involved in those type of activities.
Yes, the library involvement was brought about by Dr. Cecil Whitson, who, of course, with the assistance of Bernice Hetzner, was planning a new library on the campus. When the old library, which was located in this area, was established, it was to be a temporary library, which I think stayed in a temporary situation from 1925 to 1970. And they were building, they were trying to build a new building, and there was a bill passed by Congress, the National Library Building Bill, which appropriated enough money to build about 3 or 4, maybe 5 new medical libraries in the United States. And Dr. Whitson was trying to finish the architectural designs for a new library on this campus to be eligible for that particular bill. And he and Mrs. Hetzner had done a valiant job in getting that together. The bill was so designed that there had to be some outside money come in. Part of that came in from an appropriation through the building funds of the state university. And then they still lacked another $350,000. And I was asked to take on the chairmanship of a fundraising committee for which Dr. Fay Smith, Dr. Perry Tolman, and I were very much interested in. The three of us traveled a good bit over the United States during the year of 69 and 70, and met with many alumni in various places in various cities, and had some very nice experiences. And we raised our 350. In fact, we raised 385,000.
Very good. Now, you mentioned a number of people. You mentioned Whitson, Rigby. You know, you have actually worked with many deans here at the College of Medicine. You mentioned with Cutter back in.
Yes, I
2021.
I can't remember all of them right off, but
Cutter, and then there was the Keegan.
Yeah, Cutter was followed by Keegan, as I recall.
And Pointer.
And then there was Pointer. No, there's one other one in there
Luth?
someplace that I don't
Luth?
remember, but there was Luth
Tolman?
in there, and Tolman, and Rigby,
Whitson you mentioned.
Whitson, and Sparks, and
Kugel.
Kugel, and Dr. Banslow,
Okay.
and now Dr. Andrews.
Yes. So that's many people you've worked with in starting at the beginning of the third decade of the century.
That's right.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much for coming in,
You're very welcome.
being interviewed.
I'm sorry I wasn't better prepared with all the names that you wanted.
I don't think it's really that. I don't think it's names. I think it's the changes that have come that you've witnessed first as a student, then come back in the role as a teacher, really, and then as a master clinician. I use that term advisedly. As a role model also for many generations in your own specialty, and I dare say for many people in medical education. Thank you very much.
Thank you.